The story begins at St. John High School, a very strange school divided into two completely different sections. The South Zone, where the athletic students study, and the North Zone, reserved for the smartest students. Even though they share the same campus, students from both sides rarely get along, as each group views the school from a totally different perspective. One day, a teacher asks Kai-shi, our protagonist and a second-year student from the North Zone, to go to the South Zone. Unlike what anyone would expect, Kai-shi doesn't show even a hint of fear, though her friends are nervous, especially because they're afraid she might run into Lee, the leader of the South Zone. Lee is known for being mischievous and hard to control, but he's also an exceptional runner who has won many competitions. When Kai-shi arrives at the athlete's classroom to collect report cards, she notices that some students haven't turned theirs in yet, and one of them is Lee. At the same time, Lee and his friends head to the school's broadcasting room, unaware that Kai-shi is already there and that their reports are missing. While they chat, one of Lee's friends starts talking about Kai-shi, describing her as the star of the North Zone, a girl very popular with boys, yet known for rejecting every love letter she's ever received, which makes others see her as cold and uninterested in romance. Suddenly, Kai-shi enters the room looking for the missing reports, but at that exact moment, one of Lee's bad-tempered friends sticks his foot out to trip her. Kai-shi almost falls, but while trying to keep her balance, she accidentally presses the loudspeaker button. Fortunately, Lee reaches her just in time, and they end up holding on to each other for a few brief seconds. They quickly let go of each other, and a few teasing remarks immediately followed. What neither of them realized, however, was that the loudspeaker was still on, and the entire school was listening to their conversation in real time. The situation became even more awkward when Lee mockingly called Kai the eternal second-place winner, reminding her that she had never been able to surpass Ning, her gifted classmate who always topped the North Zone rankings. Furious, Kai stormed out of the room, and afterward she scolded Lee's friend, telling him it wasn't right to treat girls that way, but it was already too late. What happened in the broadcasting room spread across the school forum, and soon the North Zone students began mocking Lee and his friends, which only made Lee angrier. Determined to restore his honor, Lee planned to do something during the end-of-semester physical exam taking place that same day. When the event began, he and his group tried to intimidate the North Zone students during warm-ups. Seeing her classmates being treated as weak, Kai refused to stay silent and challenged them to a ball-throwing competition. Although the athletes won easily, things escalated when one of Kai's classmates cheated by spilling water on the field, causing one of Lee's friends to slip. What started as a sports challenge quickly turned into a massive fight between both sides, creating total chaos. As a result, Lee, Kai, and Ning, all class representatives, were summoned to the principal's office by Mr. Ma, the school's director. Mr. Ma, the school principal, gave them a serious warning, telling them they had to put an end to the conflicts and work together to resolve the situation. Over time, the school decided to introduce a new experiment, combining the South Zone students, the athletes, with the North Zone students who were more academically focused. The idea was for the athletes to start learning more theoretical subjects, while the North Zone students would take additional physical education classes, all with the intention of promoting well-rounded development, or at least that's what the administrators believed. However, not everyone agreed. The North Zone students, who were used to their own pace and study style, were clearly unhappy with the proposal, and even our main girl openly showed her disagreement. The teacher explained that this initiative was meant to teach them how to accept differences and work as a team. When the third semester began, Lee and his friends sent a message to Kai-ji's group, warning them not to mess with them, even though they were fewer in number. But their plan quickly backfired when during exercise, someone stole their clothes, forcing them to walk shirtless across the entire school. This, of course, got them into trouble with Mr. Ma. Later, they discovered that Seiyu was behind the prank and immediately began planning revenge. They thought Seiyu would sit on Kai-ji's chair, so they sabotaged it, but it was Kai-ji herself who ended up sitting there. The damage was so bad that she had to cut her skirt to clean herself up, until Seiyu kindly offered her a pair of pants. Embarrassed by what had happened, Lee apologized to her. She firmly told him that he needed to grow up and start behaving more seriously. Meanwhile, we see that Lee and Seiyu, despite being neighbors, still weren't speaking to each other. When the classes were finally mixed, Lee was surprised by the seating arrangement. The students with the lowest grades, that is, the athletes, were placed in the front rows. Lee felt this was unfair, so he went to talk to Kai-shi in her role as class representative to understand why it had been arranged that way. However, the situation caught the attention of the physical education teacher, Beefy, who invited the North Zone students to join the discussion. At the same time, the group of athletes also consulted their teacher, Shinjin, who explained that the mixed classes had a clear purpose: to help both groups learn from each other and develop skills they normally wouldn't have. Shinjin mentioned that contact between both worlds would encourage encourage empathy and mutual understanding, while Beefy added that having good physical condition could even benefit academic students when applying to college. After this conversation, Lee was seated behind Kai-shi in the classroom, following Shinjin's instructions. The teacher also asked our main girl to pay more attention to the athletes to ensure better coexistence. After reflecting on everything, Lee and his friends decided to stop causing trouble. Lee even approached Kai-shi to ask for a truce, which she accepted as long as he respected her as well. But soon after, a new conflict arose. Some North Zone students started complaining that the athletes' sports shoes were dirtying the classroom, and their reaction was extreme. They threw the shoes into the trash. When Lee found out about this, he exploded with anger and demanded that whoever did it retrieve them. But that person refused, claiming the shoes were old and worn out anyway. The argument almost turned into a fight, but luckily things calmed down when the person involved apologized, and Kai-shi promised that the shoes would be kept safe. However, later on, another student named Pan Hao took the shoes and threw them into a part of the school that was about to be demolished. Furious, Lee assumed Kai-shi was behind it, so she, along with Seiyu, decided to look for him to prove she had nothing to do with it. Eventually, they managed to find the shoes, and that's when Lee explained why they were so important to him. They weren't just sports sneakers, they were precious memories, a gift from his grandmother when he won his first race. Feeling grateful, Lee thanked Kai-shi for finding them and sincerely apologized for blaming her. To make up for his mistake, Pan Hao ended up cleaning all of the athletes' shoes. Later, Lee and his friends went out to eat at a restaurant, and between jokes and laughter, they started talking about how kind and responsible Kai-shi was. But in the middle of the conversation, Lee saw her with a boy wearing glasses, and even though he said nothing, something stirred inside him for the first time, a strange pang he didn't quite understand. The very next day at school, Lee couldn't get the image of the mysterious boy with glasses out of his head, the one he had seen next to Kai-shi. His uneasiness grew even more when he heard rumors that many girls were interested in that guy. Worried, Lee started imagining the worst, afraid that Kai-shi might be deceived, so he tried to warn her. He didn't say it directly, but he hinted that she shouldn't trust people too quickly. However, his words only ended up confusing her. During physical education class, something unexpected happened. Our girl, clearly upset by Lee's behavior, was about to scold him when she suddenly fainted. This sent Lee into a panic, and he accompanied her to the infirmary, gave her a hot drink, and even helped bandage her ankle. Feeling embarrassed and guilty, he apologized for bothering her, and in the middle of their conversation, he couldn't help but mention the boy with glasses. That's when Kai-shi revealed that he wasn't her boyfriend, but her younger brother, Yan Hao. Hearing this, Lee breathed a sigh of relief, and inside, from that moment on, something changed. He began showing a much more obvious interest in Kai-shi, repeatedly insisting on doing physical education activities with her, although she kept her distance. Then one day, right in the middle of the classroom and without any shame, Lee asked her for her phone number in front of everyone. Naturally, Kai-shi blushed, leaving the class silent for a few seconds. Later, Lee told his friend Lin Chuan that he only wanted to be her best friend. But Lin Chuan knew him well and sensed there was more to it. Lin Chuan decided to help Lee get closer to Kai-shi by starting with learning more about her, so he sent his friend Hanji to talk to Han Ye, one of Kitzi's closest friends. But unfortunately, Han Ye didn't reveal much, and Lin Chuan's plan didn't make much progress. Not long after, in chemistry class, Professor Jin paired Lee and Kai-shi together for a project. Kai-shi didn't want to openly reject the decision, but she tried to convince Lee to switch groups, and when that didn't work, she finally confessed her concern. She was afraid her grades would drop if they worked together. Lee, however, didn't give up and promised he would push himself to the limit. This attitude made Kai-shi see him in a different light, and she eventually decided to give him her phone number. That same night, while having dinner, Lee received a text message from Kai-shi, and he was so excited that he resolved to study even harder to prove she could trust him. Meanwhile, in her room, Kai-shi was looking at an old photograph of herself with a childhood friend, but the memory pulled her back back to a traumatic moment, a house fire where they had both been trapped, a terrifying experience that still haunted her. A few days later, the physical education department sent visitors to the school to observe the mixed class program. On that very day, Kaishi's class was conducting a chemistry experiment and everything was going fine until Lee made a mistake that almost caused a fire in the lab. Chaos broke out instantly as all the students ran out, but Kaishi couldn't move. The trauma resurfaced, freezing her in place, and to make things worse, she injured her ankle as well. She fell to the ground, but Lee rushed to help her and didn't leave her side until he made sure she was safe, just as the teachers and the visiting officials from the department arrived to see what had happened. Later, in the treatment room, their roles were reversed. This time, it was Kaiji who helped Lee with his injuries, and she took the opportunity to open her heart. She told him about her childhood, about the fire she had been trapped in, and how what he did reminded her of her old best friend. She also apologized for being so negative toward him, and asked if they could start over as true friends. After everything that happened in the lab, the visitors from the Department of Education were deeply impacted by the experience. Although the lab incident was alarming, it also brought something very positive. For the first time, the students from both the North and the South began to care for and look out for one another. This change in attitude made the visitors see the idea of mixed classes in a new light, realizing that maybe it really could work. A few days later, Principal Ma visited the class and, although he was concerned about the accident, he said he was proud of the teamwork they had shown and reminded them to take care of each other and stay united as a true team. The next day, Lee noticed that Kaiji's bruises seemed to be getting worse, and without saying much, he began to look after her, giving her medicine and even gifting her a discount card to her favorite bookstore. The gesture moved Kaiji deeply, and her friend Yui noticed that she had been smiling more lately, even without any clear reason. At the same time, Seiyu began to notice how close Lee and Kaiji were becoming, and he couldn't help feeling jealous, since he had liked Kaiji for a long time but had never told her. He had never confessed it, but every morning he woke up early just to take a longer route so he could walk alongside her. However, ever since Lee started spending more time with Kaishi, Seiyu began to distance himself, convinced that she only saw him as a friend and a classmate, not as someone special. Meanwhile, Lee found it harder and harder to focus in class. He couldn't stop thinking about Kaishi and how beautiful she was. Strangely enough, Kaishi felt the same way, but because of her reserved nature, she tried to focus on her studies no matter how distracted she felt. One day, Huanye accidentally threw away the discount card Lee had lent to Kaishi, and worried about losing it, she desperately began searching through the trash. Seiyu saw her, and even though he didn't have to, decided to help. He knew how much that card meant to her. A few days later, he finally found it and returned it to her, and grateful for his help, Kaishi felt relieved and thanked him right in the middle of class. Putting that aside, the school then organized a big relay race between classes. Sanji, one of the students, challenged Lee to a race, betting that the loser would have to wear a turtle costume and buy food for the winning team. Without much hesitation, Lee accepted. After days of practice, Coach Beefy selected the runners for the team, and both Lin Chuan and Lee were chosen. But just before the competition began, one of the girls on the team couldn't run, so Kaishi took her place, even though her leg hadn't fully recovered yet. During the relay race, as Kaishi passed the baton, she suddenly tripped. Lee immediately stopped to help her, but she urged him to keep running. Giving it his all, Lee continued, yet in the end, he lost to Sanji. Surprisingly, Lee didn't get upset at all. In fact, he smiled when he saw a photo of himself with Kaishi taken during the race. The picture quickly went viral in the class group chat, with many students commenting that they looked like an adorable couple, which couldn't help but make him smile. The next day, Lee kept his promise and came to school wearing a turtle costume, but to his surprise, his friends showed up dressed the same way to support him, so he didn't feel embarrassed at all. During the break, Kaishi and her classmates helped Lee by buying food for Sanji's team, and that's when Lee found out the idea had actually been Kaishi's. Feeling grateful, he invited her to eat together at a restaurant, and she accepted with a smile. However, not everything was perfect. Lee began to worry about his poor grades. Even though his parents never pressured him, he still wanted to make them proud, and together with his friends, he briefly considered cheating on the exams. Kaishi's found out about the plan and confronted him, asking him not to do it. Later, Lee opened up to her about why he had thought of cheating, and instead of judging him, she offered to help him study. Seiyu also joined the study sessions, and afterward, Lee promised to meet Kaishi at school so they could review together. At the last moment, Lee canceled their study session with Kaishi because he had other plans with his friends. But the worst part came the next day when everyone found out that Lee and his group of friends had skipped class to go watch a soccer game, leaving Kaishi standing there alone. Naturally, she felt deeply disappointed and started avoiding him completely. Lee, not understanding what he had done wrong, was left frustrated, confused, and restless. That same night, Kaishi, still upset, talked to her younger brother about everything that had happened. With his usual blunt honesty, he guessed that maybe his sister had feelings for Lee and got angry when she realized he wasn't taking his promises seriously. Embarrassed by the conversation, Kitsy sent him out of her room. The next day at school, Lee tried to explain himself, telling her that the school had organized a special training session with national athletes and he didn't want to miss it. He also didn't expect it to run so long that he would miss the study session. After listening, Kaishi understood his reasons and forgave him. Lee then promised that he would never break his word again. With the exams approaching, Kaishi and Seiyu helped Lee and his friends study intensely. When the big day finally arrived, everyone was nervous but better prepared than ever. Just before the exam, Hyun-ye approached Lee and confessed that she had found an answer key online. Despite the temptation, Lee and his friends didn't cheat and faced no major problems on the exams, thanks to all the effort and long nights of studying. Later, wanting to thank Kaishi for her support, Lee took her to the school playground. For her, it wasn't just any place. Since her father's death, she hadn't returned there, but the moment became something special. Kaishi smiled again, tried all the rides as if it were her first time, and for a brief moment, she felt genuinely happy. A couple of days later, when the exam results were published, Lee and his friends were called to Mr. Ma's office. With some suspicion, he showed Lee screenshots proving that Hyun-ye had received the answers from someone through social media. He admitted it was true, but explained that he had deleted them after talking with Kaishi, who convinced him not to cheat. Despite this, Mr. Ma still had doubts and didn't fully trust that everyone had earned their good grades on their own. Lee felt hurt, not just by the suspicion, but also by realizing that his own teacher didn't trust him. However, Kaishi believed in them and presented proof, screenshots of study sessions, schedules, and conversations. Unfortunately, Panhao saw this evidence and started spreading rumors, making Lee and his friends the target of teasing at school. To make things worse, Lee thought Kaishi had intentionally shared the screenshots, which made him feel betrayed. The situation reached a breaking point when Mr. Ma mentioned the incident in front of the whole school, publicly embarrassing Lee and Sangi, who already had a rivalry with him, couldn't hide his satisfaction. Meanwhile, Kaishi felt guilty and kept trying to reach out. Kaishi kept trying to reach Lee, but he wasn't responding to her messages. Even though Lee and Seiyu didn't get along very well, Seiyu also believed in his innocence and secretly reviewed Mr. Ma's screenshots in detail. He noticed something very suspicious and spoke with Kaishi, and together, they decided to investigate further. Seiyu used a school computer to trace the origin of the message containing the answers, managed to recover the deleted data, and discovered that Sanji had anonymously sent the answers to Hyun-ye. Kaiji and Seiyu compiled all the evidence and quietly presented it to Mr. Ma after first discussing it with Professor Bifei and Professor Jean. Upon learning the truth, Mr. Ma admitted his mistake and issued a public apology through the school announcement system. Sanji was then punished for his actions and confessed he had acted out of jealousy because he felt Lee was always better at everything. Later, Lee was called to office talking to Sanji. Without holding a grudge, he told him that instead of interfering in others' lives, he should focus on becoming the best version of himself. That same night, after hearing from Kaiji everything Seiyu had done to help him, Lee wanted to thank his neighbor, and gradually, they began to become friends, with Seiyu confessing that he had intervened because he couldn't bear to see Kaiji so upset over these problems. Meanwhile, Lee noticed that Kitsy was spending more time with him, and their growing closeness didn't go unnoticed. From a distance, Seiyu watched silently, holding back his feelings as he saw their relationship strengthen. But not long after, a new student joined Kaishi's class, Jingshi, a handsome and charismatic boy who immediately caught everyone's attention. What no one expected was that he was also a very famous celebrity who had returned to school to finish his studies. Naturally, many admired him, but Jingshi only had eyes for one person, yes, for Kaishi. One day, when they were alone, he revealed a shocking secret. He was her childhood friend, the one who had saved her from the fire years ago. After that accident, his life had completely changed. He moved abroad, became an idol, and now he was back in front of her as if no time had passed. Meanwhile, both Lee and Seiyu began to realize they had deeper feelings for Kaishi, but with Jingshi now in the picture, they felt threatened. The new boy was attractive, kind, and had an emotional history with her, so fearing they might lose her, they decided to make a temporary truce. They even confronted Kaishi, warning her not to let anyone hurt her. But Jingshi, being clever, realized that both Lee and Seiyu also had feelings for her. Later, Jingshi asked Kaishi for help with English because he was auditioning for a role in an international film and needed to improve. Without hesitation, she agreed to help him. Kaishi then invited Lee and Seiyu to join the study session for other subjects, and they agreed immediately. Not only because they didn't want to leave her alone with Jingshi, but also because it was the perfect excuse to spend more time by her side. Gradually, the group grew closer, sharing moments of studying and laughter, and for the first time in a long while, Jingshi felt truly happy. Despite his stressful life as an idol, he even started skipping work commitments just to be with them. However, his sister and manager quickly intervened, reminding him firmly that being an idol came with responsibilities, and that having chosen this path meant accepting the sacrifices, even if it meant missing out on moments of youth. Taking their advice seriously, Jingshi reflected on his choices and decided to refocus on his dream of becoming a professional musician, so much so that his agency even assigned him a personal tutor to refine his musical skills. Meanwhile, at Seiyu's house, tension was rising. His mother wanted him to become a lawyer, but secretly, Seiyu dreamed of being a programmer and had been learning and practicing on his own in secret. The situation became even more complicated when the school asked students to choose their preferred universities. Without telling anyone, Seiyu selected a technology university, knowing his mother would never approve. On the other hand, Lee faced his own challenge, gaining admission to Tsinghua University, one of the most prestigious in the country. Professor warned him that with his current grades, it would be extremely difficult, but Lee refused to give up. However, this decision caused a conflict with his friend Lin Chuan, since both of them had promised to attend the same sports university. Lin Chuan thought Lee was changing his path just because of KIX's influence, but Lee explained that she had only encouraged him to dream bigger. He also understood why Lin Chuan wanted to go to a nearby university, to be close to his mother and help with the family store. Lee told him that he could still aim for Huaqing University so that his mother could be proud. After discussing it, they all began studying together with renewed effort, and for the first time, each of them had a clear dream and was determined to achieve it. One day, Seiyu's mother discovered him filling out his university preference form in his room. Furious, she threw all his programming books on the floor and forbade him from going out or seeing his friends. Seiyu felt devastated, but he didn't give up. On the contrary, he was determined to prove to his mother that his dream was worth it. He decided to enter a programming competition, and everything seemed to be going well, until his mother made an unexpected decision. She transferred him to another school. When Kaishi's, Jingshi, and the other classmates learned about this, they decided to help him. They invited his mother to attend the competition so she could see her son's talent with her own eyes. During the event, she was impressed by his skills but remained firm, telling him that if he didn't want to change schools, he needed to focus entirely on his studies. Eventually, the results of the final exam were announced. Thanks to all her effort, Kaishi managed to become the top student in the school, even surpassing Seiyu. During the holidays, Seiyu secretly continued attending programming classes, preparing for a new competition, while Lee and Kaishi began spending more time together, strengthening their bond. Jingshi, who noticed everything, wasn't willing to give up easily. One day, he approached Lee and confessed that he was planning to declare his feelings to Kaishi very soon. Then, something unexpected happened. A fake photo began circulating on social media, showing Jingshi and Kaishi as if they were living together. The rumor spread quickly, causing a huge scandal, and reporters even showed up at Kaishi's house, putting her privacy at risk and nearly revealing her identity. Fortunately, Lee acted quickly, taking Kaishi and her brother to his house and protecting them from all the chaos. Later, with Seiyu's help, they discovered that someone had been stalking Jingshi inside the school. They confronted the person, forced them to delete all the fake photos, and apologize. This also prevented Jingshi from getting into trouble with his agency. Panhao, who had helped spread the fake image, admitted everything, explaining that he just wanted attention because he had always felt ignored, even by his own parents. Instead of holding a grudge, Jingshi forgave him, and Panhao decided to start over. Panhao decided to transfer to another school. When the holidays came to an end and the university entrance exams were approaching, Lee took Kaishi to a quiet and special place. Nervously but tenderly, he asked if she would stay by his side, if she could be with him. Kaishi blushed but didn't give a direct answer. A little later, Jingshi organized a fan party, but in reality, he planned it thinking of someone very special, Kaishi. He dedicated dedicated a heartfelt song to her, full of emotion, and that's when she realized that her friend truly had feelings for her. After the party, Jingxi told her that he was leaving for abroad to study at a music academy. He even asked her to go with him, but she politely told him she couldn't. The next day, Jingxi said goodbye to his friends and left, closing an important chapter of his life. On the other hand, Lee and Seiyu, who had had their differences, had now become good friends. On Lee's birthday, Seiyu wished him a happy birthday for the first time. The following day, Lee invited Kaishi to celebrate by taking a walk and joining him in his school sports practice. He thanked her for being by his side on such a special day and invited her to his next competition, which could earn him a key certificate to enter Tsinghua University. Seiyu, watching them from a distance, felt something stir inside him. Seeing them so close made him uneasy, but he decided to keep his feelings to himself. A few days later, we see that a painful date arrived for Kaishi, the anniversary of her father's death. However, her family decided to turn it into a celebration as if it were her birthday, to replace the pain with happy memories. After the celebration, Kaishi, who didn't remember much about her father, asked Haoshi to tell her more about him. Her brother then shared stories of his bravery, his smile, and his battle against leukemia. But during the conversation, Haoshi noticed something very concerning: bruises on his sister's arms. He became frightened, fearing she might have the same illness their father had. Kaishi reassured him that they were just bruises, but deep down, she was also scared, as she had been feeling weak and dizzy for a long time. The next day, she visited the school infirmary, which recommended a full checkup at the hospital. The news shook her, leaving her demotivated, without energy to study, and starting to distance herself from everyone. Seiyu, who knew her very well, noticed something was wrong and advised her to talk to her family and get the test done. Kaishi, however, didn't want anyone to know, especially Lee, because she didn't want to distract him right before his big competition. She began to withdraw from her friends little by little. Lee, on the other hand, immediately noticed her behavior and confronted her, worried. But Kaishi, with sadness in her eyes, simply replied that she wasn't ready to talk and needed time. Even though he felt hurt seeing that Kaishi seemed to trust Seiyu more than him, he decided to wait patiently and continue believing in her. Meanwhile, Seiyu stayed by her side, offering quiet support until she finally felt ready to talk to her family. This closeness did not go unnoticed by Lee, who began to misinterpret the situation, feeling increasingly confused and uncertain. After much thought, Kaishi finally decided to open her heart and tell her mother about the health problems she had been experiencing. Worried, her mother immediately arranged a medical consultation. During the checkup, the doctor detected irregularities in Kaishi's blood cells. Although he suspected it might just be anemia, he ordered additional tests to confirm the diagnosis. Soon after, news of her health condition began circulating among her friends and classmates, who were all deeply concerned for her. On the other hand, the big day of Lee's competition arrived, while Seiyu was participating in his programming contest. Before parting ways, they wished each other luck. Kaishi, still undecided, didn't know whether to attend the sports event since she had been distant from Lee and feared her presence might distract him. At that moment, Haoshi encouraged her to follow her heart. Moved by her friend's words, Kaishi decided to go, but along the way, she fainted. During his competition, Seiyu received an urgent call from the hospital. Kaishi had been admitted. Since he was listed as her emergency contact, they called him immediately. Without a second thought, Seiyu abandoned the contest to rush to her side. At that same moment, Lee, who was also at his own event, he noticed that something wasn't right. He didn't feel at his best physically or mentally, and the pressure ended up overwhelming him. For the first time since starting middle school, he lost a very important competition. Feeling disappointed, frustrated, and with a heavy heart, he didn't know how to handle the defeat. Later, Seiyu went to find him and spoke honestly, reminding him of those days in elementary school when he had been underestimated for not being a good runner. To prove otherwise, he had worked hard day after day until he became the champion of his class. He reminded Lee that losing once doesn't mean giving up, and abandoning everything because of a single setback would waste all the effort he had put in up to that point. Meanwhile, at Seiyu's house, tension was growing. His mother discovered that her son had been studying programming in secret and was obviously upset, thinking it would interfere with his schoolwork. His father, however, tried to mediate and show understanding, but his mother remained firm. She decided to transfer him to another school to force him to focus on academics. A week passed, and Lee didn't return to classes, which made Kai-shi and their friends seriously worried about him. During those days, Lee sought refuge in his father, a former athlete who understood him like no one else. It was then that his father said something he would never forget. Winning and losing are both part of life, but what matters most is to keep running. These words clearly touched him deeply, helping him regain his motivation. That same night, Lee met with Kai-shi, apologized for worrying her, and promised that he would continue giving his best to pursue his dream of becoming a runner. Regarding the university entrance exams, they spoke calmly, and finally Kai-shi opened up to him. She told him about her fears regarding the hospital tests and the constant anxiety she had been feeling. Lee listened carefully, held her hand, and assured her that no matter what happened, he would always be by her side. He asked her to trust him and promised that she would never have to carry her burdens alone again. A few days later, Seiyu invited Kai-shi to hang out. During this meeting, he confessed that he had been in love with her for a long time, but Kai-shi had always seen him only as a friend and had never realized his feelings. Lee advised Kai-shi to be honest with Seiyu, to not make him wait in vain, and to face her own feelings without fear, so as not to hurt him further. Kai-shi and Seiyu spent the day together visiting fun places like a robot exhibition. Although Kai-shi genuinely enjoyed her time with him, she couldn't stop talking about Lee, which made Seiyu quietly understand that his feelings for her were not reciprocated. Without directly confronting the situation, he discreetly installed a chat application he had developed on Kai-shi's phone as a way to stay connected with her, even from a distance. That same night at Seiyu's home, his parents again discussed transferring him to another school. Obviously, he didn't want to go, but his mother remained firm. Feeling powerless against her determination, he realized there was no way to change her mind. However, not all the news was bad. Later, Kai-shi received the results of her medical tests and discovered that she only had anemia. Relieved, she ended up crying tears of joy. At the same time, she received more great news. She had been readmitted to compete in the finals after a participant withdrew. To celebrate, she organized a dinner with her friends. However, Seiyu did not attend or respond to anyone's messages. When Kai-shi finally contacted him through the chat app, he revealed that he was transferring to another school. She didn't respond immediately, and her silence made Seiyu feel invisible, as if he no longer mattered. The next day, when Seiyu and his parents arrived at school, they were in for a big surprise. All the students had gathered to say goodbye with a warm ovation, as no one wanted him to leave. The student spoke to his mother, trying to make her see reason. Even Seiyu, with all his heart, begged his mother to let him stay, promising that he would focus on his studies and give his best for the university entrance exams. Moved by his honesty, his mother finally agreed, but she asked only one thing, that from now on, he always be sincere. With that, time passed, and the university entrance exams approached. Everyone worked hard, supporting one another and facing challenge like a true team. Now, the day before the exam, Professor Yin walked into the class with a smile and proudly told them how proud she was of everyone. She thanked them for supporting each other and wished them the best for the future. Finally, the big day arrived. Kai-shi and her friends completed their exams, cheered on by the encouragement of their families, celebrating a milestone they would never forget. After the exam, Kai-shi planned something very special. She gave Lee a complicated puzzle under the excuse of it being a surprise. Unable to solve it alone, Lee had to ask Seiyu and his friends for help to decipher it. In the end, the clues led him to a very special place, the broadcast room, the very place where everything had begun. When Lee arrived, he found Kai-shi waiting for him. He asked why she had chosen this place, and she, with a soft gaze, replied that it held all her most valuable memories from middle school, the highs and lows, the laughter, the challenges, and the people who had left a mark on her heart. In that space full of history, Lee confessed all his feelings, and this time, Kai-shi didn't look away. She smiled at him and gently kissed him, making it clear she felt the same. And so, surrounded by memories, emotions, and new beginnings, they closed their school chapter with a silent promise to keep running together beyond middle school. And that's the end of the summary. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It helps me keep uploading more videos. See ya, friends!